It's been a big week in cannabis legalization news, at least for the summer. We have some federal news for you about how many comments were submitted to the DEA and also how many people want to see hemp regulation. And then I got a couple of things of social equity news. It's a short, pre-recorded cannabis legalization news. I'm on vacation and we will return live next weekend. So don't forget to tune in, like, subscribe, all of that stuff. And let's cover the biggest story of the week. How many comments did the DEA get regarding its rescheduling? It was actually quite a lot, 43,000. 43,000 public comments on rescheduling, and now they have to weigh them. How long will that take? It could be a while because it's 43,000, and I don't think that they're going to be using any AI. They may use some AI to read all that data. It'd be a wonderful use case for AI considering how much data there is. But I don't know if the DEA would want to do that. They did not elongate the public comment period from the 60 days. We don't know whether or not they're going to issue a public hearing. Some of the comments before that deadline passed did ask and request for a public hearing. We'll see if the DEA grants that and believes they have standing. I don't know. 7,500 in the final 3 days. That's pretty ridiculous. 3,000 comments the day after the comment period closed. And did they get down into a breakdown? They do right here. And so 69.3% supported descheduling or decriminalization. So again, there's going to be a snarky DEA comment to that 70% approximately of people that are asking it to go beyond its authority and do Congress's job. We discuss this a lot over at Cannabis Legalization News, and we hope you tune into the live show. And also, I have a new one for the entrepreneurs about how to get a cannabis dispensary license. So stay tuned for that. 42% of the comments mentioned the need for federal marijuana reform to advance racial justice. 24% were submitted through public comment tools hosted by United Marijuana for Decriminalization, a coalition of DPA. Many of the comments were position pieces that regulators, they would publish their comment that they sent to the DEA. Some of them were quite long, and some were from Michigan, some were from Massachusetts. Those regulators, they submitted large public comments. For example, this is the 9-pager that Michigan sent to the DEA, and they snuck it right in there at the last day. But of course, they were preparing their 9 pages, and that's probably one of the reasons why a lot, like almost 18% of the comments happened in the last couple of days leading up to when it closed. But it is closed. So let's hit the high notes on here. That in Michigan, there were nearly 300,000 patients and 40,000 caregivers. Now, because they've legalized it, there's only 129,000 qualifying patients. But the prices and availability in Michigan is very good. Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, they also published their comment on July 19th in the waning days of the public comment period. The CCC, they stressed 3 areas: current and future medical use of cannabis, regulatory considerations of rescheduling, political considerations for understanding the new classification. Massachusetts legalized medical cannabis, 14 years ago, and adult use in 2016. And then the National Cannabis Roundtable, they submitted a very long public comment, 61 pages. I believe this is probably its link. Yes, and then you can download it. That's okay. Let's get the gist of it. It had 3 key topics: recent findings regarding to the abuse potential to support Schedule III classification, research opinion, scientific studies and clinical trials to demonstrate the CAMU, currently accepted medical use consistent with Schedule III, and that Schedule III should have significant positive economic impact. Let's hope so. And now that the public comment period is closed, we get to play the waiting game. I'm not sure how long the waiting game will take, but quite a lot. They have to sift through 43,000 of these comments, and granted, 70% of them are, well, superfluous because it goes beyond the power that the DEA has under the Controlled Substances Act. So they may have to respond to that. And hopefully The regulation will provide guidance for a nationwide standard of what it means to be a dispensary, a grow, or a processing license. And I really hope they then pass the torch to the FDA to start its own regulatory rulemaking process to create its own lane that's outside of FDA approved drug status for the trafficking in Schedule 3 cannabis. Stay tuned for that on Cannabis Legalization News in 2025, hopefully. What else was in the news this week? 4 out of 5 cannabis businesses want intoxicating hemp regulated, and so does nearly 50% of hemp businesses. So that's interesting. This is a research from the Cannabis Business Times. 80% of cannabis businesses and 46% of hemp businesses want intoxicating hemp-derived cannabinoids regulated like cannabis. That was something that we also put in our public comment period, that the DEA in this rulemaking needs to clean up the hemp issue and make sure that it's a wide spectrum, comprehensive regulatory scheme that clearly delineates where hemp stops and marijuana begins. Will that happen? Stay tuned. We have to wait now that the public comment period is over. Let's go to the highlights of the CBT's study regarding hemp businesses. Most constituents from state legal cannabis believe intoxicating hemp should be regulated in the same way. And so do I. Like, I have to get this dispensary open and have some skin in the game and shell out some coin. That guy at the gas station just had to put it on the shelves. He didn't have to pay the taxes. He didn't have to do security. He didn't have to get the zoning setbacks. Did you know a Chuck E. Cheese is a frickin' school, according to cannabis zoning in the city that I live in? I found that out. If I was just selling hemp, THCA weed, I could have just been selling it, and there weren't any setbacks or taxes or anything like that. And I don't need a special use permit. I digress. 51% of constituents from the hemp industry believe these cannabinoids should not be regulated in the same way. And that reminds us of that wonderful biblical verse, I believe it is Matthew 6:21, where your heart is, so will your treasure be. Upton Sinclair, it's very difficult to get somebody to believe something if his paycheck depends on him not believing it. Or change the word believing to understanding, and I think that's actually the quote. The majority of research participants from state legal cannabis businesses feel hemp-derived intoxicating cannabinoids are confusing to customers and pose a threat to the overall cannabis industry. True. Nearly a third of those licensed hemp businesses feel the cannabinoids are confusing to customers. Interesting. More than half of the participants from the licensed hemp business believe that hemp-derived intoxicating cannabinoids present an opportunity for their business. Yes, they also want to sell weed, but they want to sell weed without any of the rules. Don't forget, that is the Mary Miller Amendment working its way through the 2024 Farm Bill, which may be dead. The 2024 Farm Bill may not happen, but they've also put it in a budgetary allocation. So the writing is on the wall. If they can't agree on the Farm Bill, which again has nothing to do with hemp and everything to do with food stamps, because that's the tail that wags the dog in the farm industry. I'm sorry, the Farm Bill. And they're so against it that they're like, okay, well, if this Farm Bill doesn't pass, we got to fund the government to keep it open. So let's put it in the allocation. Either way, that is pretty interesting study out of Cannabis Business Times. What else do we have for this episode? We have some social equity news out of the Midwest. We have a story from Illinois and a story from Missouri. The Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, is touting his state's cannabis social equity program that is poised to be the national standard. And if Kamala Harris wins the White House, it very well could be the national standard going forward, which is quite exciting for a practitioner of this style in Illinois. I know it quite well, and we'll actually end our podcast this week, our truncated one. And so we'll do this as a premiere. Hopefully the live chat's blowing up and you guys are having a lot of fun and thumbs ups, and we'll be in touch soon. Stay tuned for videos and a live next week. Let's go to a quote of J.B. Pritzker. I am incredibly proud of the progress we've made. It hasn't been easy. We have more work to do. There's no doubt I'm not satisfied with where we are. We have a long way to go to repair the damage done by the war on drugs. And he said this addressing members of the International Cannabis Bar Association. And he went on to quote, "I'm really hopeful that the cannabis industry will continue to bring opportunity and wealth to communities of color for decades to come." That's actually one of the things that we have in the works for our dispensaries customer loyalty program. It's going to include R3 grant program. We'll be discussing more on that in the future episodes, but it's quite exciting how Illinois has created this R3 program. And then you can use your revenues to help hire grant writers to then go get that money that's out there and allocated to go to qualifying nonprofits in these areas to help revitalize it. Very interesting, very beneficial, we hope. And so we're going to try to put that to work. Turning to Missouri social equity news, a former leader in Missouri cannabis has been accused of predatory contracts to win social equity licenses. In response to the questions, the cannabis regulators said they're opening an investigation into 3 licenses awarded to verify whether they continue to be owned and operated by eligible individuals. Missouri has a very interesting style of social equity that must perpetuate forever. Some states have temporal restrictions about social equity ownership. Missouri's has one, and it is forever. As long as the license is in existence, it must be 51% owned and controlled by a qualified social equity applicant. For some of the application, he recruited Missourians and had them sign a 47-page contract, which would ultimately give him and his partners 90.1% of the profits and majority control of the business. Yikes. And then if the people wanted to walk away from the deal, they would be required to pay nearly a $1 million fee. We do not do these types of contracts at Collateral Base. We actually have a new method that we hope becomes something. And in other news, we filed our business method patent on it, and we hope that it becomes something that is used by regulators to do 2 things: reduce fraud, and then also increase capital to the social equity applicants. It's got this dual-pronged problem in the sense that, and for example, in Missouri, I think not just Missouri, other states have this. One of the ways you could be social equity in Missouri is to be poor and to document that you're poor. And so if you're documenting that you're poor and then it costs like $1 million to start one of these cannabis dispensaries or more, how do you square that circle? And so we have an interesting novel method to value the capital contribution of the social equity applicants so that they can be paid fairly. And also, one of the problems that you have in social equity, and one of the reasons why the fraud, I think, persists, is because of this disparity between the social equity applicants and then the people with the capital. And so the social equity applicants, sometimes some of the clients that we represent, like, I have to get them to understand this. Like, you bring the license to the table. That's not nothing. Somebody right now would pay you, hundreds of thousands of dollars for this license to take it off your hands if they could figure out a way to do it so the regulators say yes. And how can we get those into the system so that that capital contribution is reflected? Well, our provisional patent is on file, and we will be doing more information on it in the future, but that got filed as well this week. And those were the big stories in cannabis legalization news. Tune in next week. Miggy and I will be live again. More people keep wanting to come on the show, and we are thrilled. What are some good guests that we should have? If you want to come on the show, let us know. And now I'm going to go on vacation. I'll see you real soon.